there's this thing here where we think, I'm not good enough. True, probably. Whatever it is that you're pursuing right now in your life, you're probably not good enough yet. Yet? Yet. Maybe for little things that you want to do, but for those big, grand things that you actually really, really want to do, you probably aren't good enough yet. Anybody ready to run Microsoft? Anybody ready to run your own business right now? There's no shame in that. But for some reason, when we say that, we think, oh, so you're saying I'm not good enough overall. No, it's that last word, yet. Because it's that last word, yet, that gives us an understanding that it's possible. You could be good enough if you attain the right skills that you need to get there. But the first step is to acknowledge you don't have them, but then also to admit something to yourself. And I really mean that, because it's almost as hard as saying the first part. You have to admit to yourself that you could get that skill set. You could get those abilities. In other words, it's hard for us to say, I'm not good enough yet. The last part, yet. But once you say yet, now you almost have an obligation, a responsibility to yourself, to your own development, to your own mastery, to then go out and get that skill set to get you to where it is that you say you want to be. This is why clarifying our language is so important. So important. When we say things like, you might doubt yourself, but that's not the reality. Yeah, but isn't it? Are you going to, when we say, I'm not good enough, are you good enough? That's not really a doubtful statement. That's a definitive statement. I am not good enough. Versus a doubt, which would be something like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I can do this. There's some wiggle room there. There's an opportunity in there. I don't know if I'm good enough. What follows that statement is the important thing. I don't know if I'm good enough. So, do I want to know if I'm good enough? How do I know if I'm good enough? There's only one way to know. It's one word. Somebody? Try. Try. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know. You're on a plane and the pilot passes out. Can anyone fly this plane? Do you doubt that you can fly the plane? Probably. How do you know? Try. And that's an extreme example. But can anybody else on the plane fly? Is anybody else on the plane qualified to do it? Why not you? Well, just because I don't know. Nobody else knows. So wouldn't you rather take it into your own hands? Would you rather look at the person next to you and go, I have no idea who you are, stranger, but you know what? I'm going to trust you to land this plane even though you have no idea how to do it either. Or would you rather put it into your own hands? And that's a real question, because a lot of people would rather just let a stranger determine the course of their life rather than take it into their own hands. If you're going to bet on somebody in your life, I guess I would ask you, who are you betting on? Are you betting on, you need to know language arts stuff. Are you betting on me to give you what you need to know? What do you know about me besides the things that you've seen me talk about at the front of this classroom? And do any of you even know when you walk in the door in the morning which Scanlon you're going to get? Are you going to get the energetic, happy Scanlon? Are you going to get the pensive, brooding Scanlon? Are you going to get the seemingly angry, but not really, just trying to have fun Scanlon who thinks he's funny, but you take it as being angry? Which me are you going to get? And you're going to trust this guy to give you the things that you need? Why? I mean, the school put you in charge, so you're going to trust the school to hire the person who's going to guide you and direct you? I'm not saying it's a bad bet, but I'm just asking, if you really think that the thing is important, maybe bet on yourself to find out what you think you might need to know. You've got access to a lot of information to you. And that's just one thing, of course. But I mean, think about in the course of your life, how many things are you relying on other people to give you? I'm not talking about food and water. I'm talking about the things that you think that you really need in life. You think that you need some kind of emotional support. Where are you getting that? from a video, from a person who doesn't really care about you, but really, really cares if you click, because that's how they get money. Friends who only know the side of you that you've shown them, they don't know the real you. Nobody knows you better than yourself, hopefully. Now, that isn't true for everybody, by the way. There are some people who've never really gotten to know themselves, and so you might have a friend who knows you better. You might have a family member who knows you better than you know yourself. But that's only because they've paid closer attention to you than you have. So I guess the first thing is to pay attention to yourself, figure out who you are, and then really assess yourself and start to think about what it is that you might be, and I'll use the word deficient in, although it's not really a deficiency, it just means that you haven't gotten to where you want to go yet. Like if you think to yourself, I have a lot of self-doubt. How do you cure self-doubt? You try. Are you going to fail? Probably. Why does that matter? Because as soon as you get it through your head that the worst case scenario is possible and that you'll be fine anyway, that's the thing that gives you the courage to go for things. It isn't a matter of desperation of like, if I don't do this, I'm gonna be ruined anyway. No, that's just like two terrible situations versus I'm gonna try this. And the worst case scenario is I fail. But you know what? I've built myself up enough in other ways that even if I fail at this, I'm going to be fine. I'll figure things out. And that takes, of course, experimentation to fail at things and to succeed at things. I know that we talk a lot about you have to have the courage to fail. You've heard this. Failure is a good thing because then you learn. Now, that's a way of making ourselves feel better about our failures. No, if you fail, will you learn from it? Hopefully. Then you'll have fewer failures in the future. But this is the time to fail earlier in life because you have opportunities now to find out what your limits are, to find out what you're good at, to find out what you can and can't do, but more than anything, to find out what you can survive. And I don't just mean like actually breathe afterwards. I mean the things that you can actually recover from. Would you rather find out now, or would you rather find out when you're 50 and you have a mortgage that's on the line, and you have a car payment, and you have people who depend on you? Is that the time you want to step up and go, you know what? I've always wanted to be a dancer. I think now is the time to really put myself into dance. It's too late, probably, because at that point, failure is going to be catastrophic because people depend on you. You've got too many bills. You have all these other things going on. At another time, though, when you're just depending on yourself, then you can find those limits. Examine it. Find out what your limits are, and then expand them, and expand them, and expand them. But there's this thing here where we think, I'm not good enough. True, probably. Whatever it is that you're pursuing right now in your life, you're probably not good enough yet. Yet. Maybe for little things that you want to do, but for those big, grand things that you actually really, really want to do, you probably aren't good enough yet. Anybody ready to run Microsoft? Anybody ready to run your own business right now? There's no shame in that. But for some reason, when we say that, we think, oh, so you're saying I'm not good enough overall? No, it's that last word, yet. Because it's that last word, yet, that gives us an understanding that it's possible. You could be good enough if you attain the right skills that you need to get there. But the first step is to acknowledge you don't have them, but then also to admit something to yourself. And I really mean that because it's almost as hard as saying the first part. You have to admit to yourself that you could get that skill set. You could get those abilities. In other words, it's hard for us to say, I'm not good enough yet. The last part, yet. But once you say yet, now you almost have an obligation, a responsibility to yourself, to your own development, to your own mastery, to then go out and get that skill set to get you to where it is that you say you want to be. But there is this phantom, and it's hard to kill that phantom. You're right. It's that thing that haunts you. You're not good enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. And yeah, you can admit that. But as long as you end up with that word yet on there, and there'll be things in your life that you won't want to be good enough at. It's like Am I good enough to be a professional soccer player? No. And that doesn't bother me one single little bit. But are you good enough to, at one point I had to ask myself, are you good enough to go get a PhD? Are you good enough to go to a university? Are you good enough to play baseball, Division I school? Are you good enough to be a teacher? All of those things, it requires a self-assessment. And if it's something that you really want and you have that skill set, you can say, yes, I'm ready, and go forward. Or you can say, not yet. Let me get these skills. That doesn't mean that you pause your life. It just means you go forward as you focus on those things that you need in order to do the things that you said that you want to do. Is anybody in here ready to be a great parent? Not yet. Anybody in here ready to run a business? Not yet. Anybody in here ready to have a singing career? Maybe. That's actually possible. You could, maybe, already. But likely, not yet. It's that last word, that's yet, that we have so much trouble admitting to ourselves. Because as soon as we admit that it's possible, we've now almost given ourselves an obligation to pursue it and to try, to make the effort. If something is completely impossible, you have no obligation to pursue it. Can you fly can you jump off the Coronado Bridge and fly? No. Can you ever possibly do it? No. Therefore, you have no obligation to try. And that's what it is that we build ourselves up in our own heads. We destroy ourselves in our own heads by saying that these things aren't possible. Because if they're not possible, we have no obligation to become something. But you have an obligation to yourself to become something. Not to anybody else, maybe. As soon as you start having families, oh yeah, you have an obligation. And if you do plan to have a family someday, then yes, you 100% have an obligation to your future family right now, to make yourself better right now, so that you proceed in life and that you're at a great point when you do have your family, to have them in the best possible position in the future. It's one thing to wing it for yourself, but I don't know. You really want to wing it for your children? Wing it for your spouse? And just fingers crossed, hope things are going to be better? You're not ready right now. That doesn't mean that you don't have an obligation to get better or to get ready for the things that you want to do in your life. And by the way, the things that you want to do in your life, they might change. But you won't go wrong by getting ready for something great, preparing yourself for something great. Because the people who do great things, they're always preparing themselves and getting ready for it. And so, it's that phantom. It's that phantom. That's the hard part. You may have seen it before. And it may cause you to doubt it. But what are you going to do? Bet on somebody else for your life, or bet on yourself? Others. I probably should have asked that before I went on a tirade, huh? Were there any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Screw it. Happy Friday, huh?